Betty Bersinger stopped her stroller because something pale was lying near the sidewalk, shaped almost like a broken department store mannequin. Her little daughter tugged at her glove, unaware that the quiet lot had just become Los Angeles' darkest stage forever. Betty stepped closer, then froze, because the thing in the weeds was arranged too deliberately to be ordinary roadside trash. 6 days earlier, Elizabeth Short stood alone inside the Biltmore lobby, feeding nickels into a telephone with gloved, trembling fingers. Robert Red Manley had just left her there, believing the young woman was meeting someone from her family that afternoon. Elizabeth believed Los Angeles still owed her a door, though she did not know which door would open first tonight. She wore black because it made strangers look twice, but strangers were exactly what could destroy a girl here easily. At 22, she carried no film credits, no steady address, only a face that cameras seemed to understand instantly. She had come from Massachusetts with weak lungs, strong hopes, and a suitcase that never stayed closed for very long. Her father once vanished into rumors of suicide, teaching Elizabeth early that absence could become its own convincing family lie. California promised sunlight, movie screens, uniformed men, and rooms where nobody asked why she kept moving again after sunset. In 1943, a small fingerprint card entered federal files after an underage drinking arrest in a coastal police station there. Elizabeth forgot that card almost instantly, but one day those inked ridges would speak when she could not speak. In Los Angeles, beauty was currency, and every currency attracted men who believed they had already paid the price. She kept an address book full of names, a paper city of favors, flirtations, warnings, and possible traps to revisit. One name on that book's cover seemed ordinary then, which is why detectives would return to it again and again. On January 9, Elizabeth made calls beneath carved hotel ceilings, her voice disappearing into polished brass switchboards and waiting operators. She was waiting for someone, or avoiding someone, and every witness later remembered the waiting differently under questioning. Outside, cars hissed along downtown pavement, each back seat becoming a possible doorway into the missing week ahead. Then Elizabeth left the known world, not with a scream, but with an unanswered movement through a lobby door. For 6 days, Los Angeles kept selling oranges, tickets, gasoline, and dreams, while Elizabeth became invisible inside it completely. Her killer, whoever he was, had time enough to hide a room, clean a scene, and study fear carefully. On January 15, Betty's morning walk crossed that hidden work like a match striking buried gasoline beneath ordinary daylight. Police arrived expecting evidence everywhere, but the ground gave them something colder than blood, almost nothing at all. That absence was the first message, because a violent death without blood means death happened somewhere else first. Elizabeth had been brought there afterward, placed where ordinary daylight would perform the discovery for everyone who passed. So where was the real room, and who had the privacy to make a body disappear without neighbors hearing? Why choose a residential lot, near sidewalks, near mothers, near children, instead of darkness that protected secrets better? Detectives understood one thing quickly: this was not only murder, it was staging with an audience waiting nearby. The audience arrived wearing press badges before the neighborhood had even finished whispering about what Betty found there. Newsrooms smelled the case immediately: ink, cigarette smoke, ringing phones, and a dead girl beautiful enough for front-page headlines. Somewhere between fact and salesmanship, Elizabeth Short became the Black Dahlia, a name sharper than truth overnight in print. The nickname sold papers, but it also buried the woman beneath a flower she never asked for in life ever. Here is the turn: the killer may have understood newspapers better than the detectives understood him from the beginning already. On January 21, a caller praised the Examiner's coverage, as though reviewing his own performance from the shadows by telephone. He said he would surrender eventually, but first the police deserved time to chase him through darkness and noise. Then he promised souvenirs, and the word sounded almost polite until everyone understood what it meant in cold print. Police did not know if the voice was murder, madness, or another parasite feeding on attention alone that week. 3 days later, a manila envelope reached the papers, wearing words cut from newspapers like stolen skin carefully pasted. Inside were pieces of Elizabeth's life, photographs, papers, names, and an address book investigators suddenly touched with gloves. The packet smelled of gasoline, a chemical ghost meant to scrub fingerprints from whatever truth remained inside it. Now the vacant lot was no longer the only crime scene, the newspaper office had become one too overnight. Every reader holding the morning edition had unknowingly joined the investigation, exactly as the sender intended from the start. Detectives chased the address book through boarding houses, nightclubs, hotel desks, and men with practiced smiles across town. Robert Manley, the last confirmed driver, faced questions until his ordinary kindness began looking suspicious under fluorescent interrogation light. He had dropped her off alive, but alive was the one detail nobody could protect afterward for long at all. The FBI received blurred fingerprints by sound photo, a primitive news machine humming faster than the coroner's ink could dry. In 56 minutes, federal clerks gave Elizabeth back her name, before rumors could steal it completely from history. She never knew that one humiliating arrest in 1943 would become the instrument of her identification after death. The Bureau checked suspects nationwide, interviewing men whose alibis cracked, bent, or hardened under sudden attention from agents. Medical students were examined because the cuts suggested knowledge no ordinary street predator should possess so cleanly or calmly. False confessions poured in, each voice trying to climb inside the legend before the real killer surfaced publicly. Some confessed from fantasy, some from sickness, and some from the American hunger to be remembered by strangers. The city built suspects from doctors, drifters, lovers, policemen, millionaires, strangers, and every shadow crossing Elizabeth's path. Each theory promised a key, but every key opened only another locked room behind it in darkness. By spring, the trail had cooled into paper, gossip, misplaced notes, and exhausted detectives rubbing their eyes. The press blamed police confusion, while detectives blamed reporters for trampling leads before evidence could breathe at all. By 1949, a grand jury examined failures inside the homicide unit, with Elizabeth's case haunting every question asked. The murder had become bigger than one file, because Los Angeles had turned investigation into spectacle for profit. Elizabeth's life was replaced by rumors: actress, drifter, seductress, victim, symbol, warning, headline, and ghost. They remembered her black clothes, but not the asthma that once made winter feel dangerous for a child. They remembered her smile, but not the poverty that taught her charm could buy another night indoors safely. They argued about lovers, but rarely imagined the tired girl counting coins before another telephone call at midnight. Even grief became copy. Every private wound around Elizabeth was pulled toward public consumption by hungry newspapers. Her mother received not only loss, but a myth already running ahead of the truth back home. Years passed, suspects died, witnesses aged, and the lot that held her became ordinary again beneath sunshine. New books arrived like new detectives, each promising the final door had finally been found this time. Some pointed to physicians, some to jealous men, some to corrupt city secrets beneath polished houses and gardens. Yet no courtroom ever heard a final confession strong enough to close the case forever under oath. The file remained open in the public imagination, where certainty is cheaper than evidence and louder than silence. Look back at the beginning, the body was not hidden, it was placed like a message for mourning. Look at the envelope, her belongings were not discarded, they were mailed like proof of ownership to strangers. Look at the name, Black Dahlia did not solve Elizabeth short, it consumed her almost completely. The real twist may be that the murderer vanished because the city kept repeating his performance for decades. Every headline, suspect list, television special, and whispered tour turned the wound into entertainment again and again. The killer needed one stage, but Los Angeles built him another for nearly 80 years after that. Still, Elizabeth resists the myth whenever someone says her full name slowly enough to hear it clearly. Elizabeth Short was not a riddle, though a riddle was carved around her after death by strangers. She was a daughter, a sister, a traveler, a woman calling from a lobby with hope. The mystery remains because evidence ended where performance began, leaving detectives to interrogate shadows for generations. The cruelest clue is still the clean ground, whispering that the final room stood elsewhere in silence. Somewhere there was a floor, a drain, a sink, a door, and perhaps a witness nearby. That room may be gone now, remodeled, demolished, or standing quietly behind someone's ordinary wall today. The Biltmore lobby still gleams, but its telephones no longer carry Elizabeth's last known uncertainty through wires. The FBI files still exist, but paper cannot resurrect the missing hours between goodbye and discovery for investigators. Every generation inherits the same question, dressed in new theories, new suspects, and cleaner typography each year. Who killed Elizabeth Short is the famous question, but it is not the only one left. The darker question is why the world remembers the nickname more easily than the woman beneath it. On that quiet morning, Betty thought she saw a mannequin because the truth looked impossible to accept. 79 years later, the impossible remains there, pale in memory, waiting for someone to name it correctly.